Hi, I'm Biddle from the Colour Spun Studio, and I'm here today to show you how you can express yourself in your kitchen at home using African expressions, Express Yourself yarn, Inspire, Desire and Enchanted and Colour Spun dye. We're going to be using Colour Spun acid dye, which is not a dangerous dye. It just means that we're going to be using an acid solution to help the dye stick to the yarn. We're actually going to be using ordinary white vinegar. We're going to wet your yarn in a bucket of water with a drop of dishwashing liquid. Then we're going to move it into a bucket of acid solution, which is just plain white vinegar and water, and leave it to soak for a while. While that's soaking, we will mix up the dyes. And then for the fun part, we're going to paint a whole rainbow of yarn. Okay, so I have filled a bucket with water and a drop of dishwashing liquid, and I've added the yarn. It's nice and wet already, and I'm now going to transfer it into the acid solution. To make an acid solution, you need 3 liters of water, which is already in the bucket, and a liter of white vinegar. I've measured the vinegar out in the jug, and I'm just going to add it. And now I'm going to add the yarn. Squeeze the water out. As much as you can. And just plop it into the bucket. I've got 300 gram skeins of yarn here that have gone into this bucket. And then just push it down. You could put more in if you wanted to. Just make sure that the vinegar solution covers the yarn. If you have too much yarn, you'd rather take yarn out. Don't add any more vinegar or water. We're going to leave this to soak now for 45 minutes while we mix the dye. Make sure that your surface is covered so that you don't mess on it. Make sure you've got rubber gloves on so that you don't walk around with multicolored hands for a couple of days. And while you're working with powdered dye, you really need to wear a dust mask so that you're not breathing in dye powder. First of all, I want to tell you, if you would like to measure your dyes precisely, in a 500 ml bottle, we would put 2 grams of dye for a light mix, 5 grams of dye for a medium mix, and 10 grams of dye for a dark mix. So that means you would get light shades on your yarn, medium shades, or dark shades. I, however, prefer to work randomly, so that's what I'm going to show you today. You would need to put your dye powder into a cup, just measure it in, stir it up with a little bit of warm water and a spoon, or if you prefer, you could use a little mini whisk. This works a lot quicker. And then once you have done that, use your syringe to transfer it into your bottle to minimize the mess. And then top the bottle up with water. Give it a good shake and you're ready to go. I've already mixed these 5 colors and I'm just going to show you how to mix the last one. Now that you've finished working with the powdered dye, you can remove the dust mask. Okay, so now we're ready to dye our yarn. It's been soaking for 45 minutes and has enough solution soaked through it for the dye to be able to stick to the yarn. So take a skein out of the bucket, squeeze as much water as you can out of it. You don't need it to be dry, but it doesn't need to be dripping either. And then just lay it out on a piece of cling wrap that you have already put down on the surface. Try not to use the perforated cling wrap because it leaks. You don't have to lay the skein out perfectly. Just put it down and spread the different threads out a bit so that every bit gets dye on it. Now for the fun part. Choose the colors you want to use. Try not to mix more than 2 colors together on your skein because you're going to get a muddy look. A little bit looks good, but a lot of it just looks like mud. I'm going to start with a red dye, and I like to use these bottles. They're just a water bottle with a little clip top on them. You can use sponges to squish it in or fingers. You don't need to put it on in any particular way. I'm just going to pour on stripes. And then squish it through. Check from time to time that you're getting dye all the way through. If you're not, later we'll turn it over and put more dye on the back. In between colors, be sure to wipe your hands, otherwise you're going to mix them and you might not want to do that. Next, let's put a bit of yellow on. Yellow next to the red is just going to give you orange. And squish that in as well. You'll notice that there's a bit of dye messed on the side. Don't worry about it. It's going to get soaked into the yarn. Right, I think this is a turquoise. Put it on the other side. Where it touches the yellow, we'll get a bit of green. And here where it touches the red, we'll get some purple. Make sure your hands are clean and then just press it through. Now check to make sure that you've got dye all the way through. Just lift it slightly. And it looks fine. Once you've done that, fold the cling wrap over and close the one side and then over again the other side. Make sure that it seals. Fold the ends in and then over again. Then you're going to need a plate and just lay your parcel on top. That's ready now to go into the microwave oven for 5 minutes. Then we'll let it rest for a minute, then another 5 minutes, another 1 minute rest, and a final 5 minutes. There, it's had 15 minutes of cooking in the microwave with a rest in between each 5, and we're going to unwrap it now. Be careful of the steam when you do this. You don't want to burn, and make sure you've got gloves on. Just tear the plastic open, and here's your yarn. You probably are going to get some run off. So from here, it's going to go into a bucket of water. I have filled the bucket, but let's just leave it to cool slightly so that we don't shock it and felt it. I hope you've had a lot of fun today with African expressions in colour spun dye, expressing yourself in your kitchen, turning the natural yarn into something like this. Happy knitting, happy crocheting.